This is going to be kind of a lot of stuff, but I think you can handle it. We've talked about data types earlier in the class. Seems like forever ago now. We're in week 6. That was probably week 1 or 2. We talked about data types, and I told you that we introduced 4 data types, right? String, int, float, and Boolean. And I told you there would be more. So this is where we start introducing more. We're going to introduce 2 new data types today. And they're both similar in that they both are what we might call a list or collection type, which means that it's got multiple things involved. So lists and specifically dictionaries are the 2 data types that we're going to be talking about today. They have some similarities and some similar ways of dealing with things, and they have a few key differences. So as we go through this, I'm going to show you things for both lists and dictionaries sort of in parallel so you can get a feel for how they're different and how they're similar. So first, lists. Lists are a single variable that contains multiple things. And the things that it can contain can be any data type or any object, which means literally anything. It can be a string, an int, a float, a Boolean, or even more lists. So you can have lists inside of lists inside of lists, which can feel confusing, but it's actually really useful. And when we have lists inside of lists like that, that often is referred to as a data structure. So when you hear data structures, that's kind of what you're thinking is a complex arrangement of data in a list format. The things that are specific to a list, also known as an array. So you may see me start a list variable with AR for array. You may see me start it with LI for list. I use those 2 interchangeably. You should probably get used to it. Python calls them lists. Every other programming language on the planet calls it an array. Every single one, period. Python just decided it was going to be a list. So whatever, doesn't matter to me. It treats them the same way. So we have the variable, an equal sign, and then the list itself is surrounded by square brackets. Note, these are not parentheses. These are square brackets. And the items of the list are each declared appropriately as their own data type. So if it's a string, it's got to have quotes and that sort of thing. And they're separated by commas. Okay, so this is a list that has 4 items. Lists in Python are ordered, which means if I declare this list, the order of dog, cat, fish, bird will always stay the same until I explicitly change it in my program. That's important because we can rely on that list to always be in that order, which allows us to know that dog is always going to be in that first spot. It's reliable. They are also indexed. A list is indexed, meaning each one of these has a number assigned to it, and we use that number to communicate with that member of the list. The first thing in a list is always 0. It's going to take a little getting used to because when we list things, we say 1, 2, 3, 4. In a list or array, we say 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I want to remove dog or change dog or add something in front of dog, I'm going to refer to item 0 in this list. That's how I access that one. So it's indexed. Ordered means it stays the same order. Indexed means it's got a number associated with each one. Mutable means we can change it. Now, the last time we had the word mutable come up in class was when we were talking about strings. Strings in Python are lists of characters, right? We talked about this. But the difference between a string and a list variable is that strings are not mutable. You cannot address the second letter of a string and change that letter. I can take this string and replace it with a new string, but I can't change part of a string. In a list, that's different. It's mutable, meaning I can change the order. I can change just this member to anything I want. So it's completely mutable, means you can change it. And you can put, as I said, any object or any data type in a list. So when I create a list, let's get rid of that. All right, so when I create a list, I might create something like this. And now that's a list. And if I want to, I can print that list by printing the whole list variable like that. And so when I print that, it prints out the whole list. Okay, so that's a useful thing to know. You can print the whole list to see what's in there. So let's move on and talk about